street.
The fans still gonna love me, man?
I mean, it's probably going to get to a point. This virus is going to do what it's going to do. It probably just kill us all, whatever. But at least I'd rather go down drinking a beer. You know?
Oh, you drink a beer anyway.
I would. That could be true.
You just as bad as Troy. You just don't want anything to stop you from drinking beer.
Shit, there could be beer in that bottle. I'm going to drink this shit. I've been drinking beer all weekend at this goddamn convention telling myself I ain't gonna
Exactly. They'll have some beer there that will say coronavirus on it, and you'll still drink it.
Yeah. I just want to come and tell you folks just very quickly, the coronavirus is it has, and there were jokes, the coronavirus has nothing to do with beer. All right, for all you stupid motherfuckers.
What? Didn't hear about that? Oh.
Corona, it's been jokes. I've heard the jokes. I thought everybody had heard them also. I thought people were laughing and having a good time. But mother today have stopped drinking Corona beer because they don't want to catch the virus. It's the same.
The Corona beer virus.
Apparently,
All right, that's dumber than what I heard.
They thought that ground zero for the coronavirus came from the bottle. They thought they bottled the disease and was selling it to people. Apparently, some of the effects of the coronavirus is flu-like symptoms, fever, phlegm, congested lungs, and stupidity. This is, and the stupidity is spreading a lot faster and wider than any of those other symptoms. Drink all the coronavirus beer you want. You will not actually catch it.
Sure. Hey, what's better than coronavirus with Lyme disease?
This will do nothing to you. Please stop making this company suffer. I mean, beer does a lot of things. It's full of sugars and fat. It's bad for your health, but it is not giving you the coronavirus. Stop making this company suffer because y'all are too stupid to know the difference between a joke and the real thing. This is not happening. Chris, what are the figures behind this? What did people actually say, man?
So, according to a survey, that about 38% of the U.S. population does not want to even touch and or drink a Corona beer because they think
38%.
38%, yeah.
Jesus,
because they think it spreads the coronavirus.
Look at what's happening here. People just hear the word Corona, and it's associated with the news and them talking about a virus that's killing people. And they're thinking people are actually thinking, if I drink this shit, I'm going to die. I mean, I don't even want to be associated with anything that's called Corona at all. Motherfuckers probably moving off Corona Boulevard and all kind of shit.
That's ground zero.
Yeah. And I knew it. I knew that the moment, and I said, I don't think people are stupid, but I knew the moment that this virus was named Corona, I knew all their competitors would be thrilled about this. They probably have spread this shit. They probably got to go to the neighborhood, selling people on Budweiser. Why? Well, you don't want to die, do you? You don't want to catch a disease. That's that simple. You will not catch the coronavirus by simply drinking Corona beer. Unless you drink after this some son of a bitch that already has it, then maybe. Maybe.
I feel like once people start eating Tide Pods, then there's nothing that you don't have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right about that. Let me stop. Let me stop. Ain't that some shit?
Yeah.
Motherfuckers would rather eat Tide Pods than drink a safe Corona beer. You serious? People, they don't want to, now they don't even want to talk to Chinese people or
don't want to eat Chinese food. Well, I don't know who's working back there. Oh my God.
Oh Jesus, man. This is the kind of ignorance that needs to settle down.
Yeah.
Y'all gonna be making concentration camps with Chinese people who only have Corona beer to drink. This is
at least they'll have plenty to drink.
They'll be drunk as There'll probably be some of the healthiest people out there. They probably built up their immune system drinking all this Corona beer. Jesus, man. And I started to call you Corona Herman over here.
Corona Chris.
Corona Chris over here. Chris is the one that let me know about this. And I was just like, wow, what? Huh? Yeah. People joke about this. Y'all haven't heard the jokes? But there are more things to worry about. You know what? It's gotten so stupid now that they actually, they have, let me see here. They have in China, they getting silly with it too. Yeah. They banned a game called Plague Incorporated right here. People, this is just a video game.
Autopsy 3. Virus. Provisional name is X12.
They made this game for people who want to go and fictionally, just for fun. You're not really doing it, but just for fun on your computer, you can go and create diseases and illnesses and I guess, viruses and diseases. And China shut it down because They are scared some 14-year-old kid is going to be in his room and accidentally create the coronavirus that will somehow pop up his computer and start infecting people. We joke, but it's this kind of paranoia that can eventually be harmful because you're not taking the precautions in the right way. You're doing it in a way that's stupid. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you're suppressing information, and that's what the Chinese regime has done for decades. This is just the latest example. I mean, it's been brought to light. Just within this year, especially by even comedians and other people. But no, it is dangerous. But in a way, you just can't help but laugh.
Our president right now is that. Oh, here's this thing. I got to show this. I showed this before.
This is the clip. We won't be able to hear it, but
that's right. You guys won't be able to hear it, but just so you guys can see, Chris has already seen it, so Chris can probably, just read the lips in there, the body language or something. And Martin, I'm sorry you can't see it because this is stupid. There's a news reporter who's even laughing about this shit. He's like, sometimes these reporters, they just want to look at the camera and be like, "You dumb motherfucker, man, really, y'all, you Corona beer, you don't drinking it because you think that's preventing the disease of getting to you?"
A story going around today claims that many people think the illness sweeping the globe is connected to Corona the beer virus.
People are not looking up facts about how to actually prevent coronavirus or cleanliness or taking care of yourself or measures you should take to not get any kind of illnesses. But instead, they're looking up how is coronavirus connected to the beer. People are not looking at facts at all about the virus itself. They're trying to see, if Corona is trying, the beer companies, Corona is trying to actually kill people.
According to the CDC, the coronavirus gets its name from the crown-like spikes it shows under a microscope.
This shit is right up there with mustard gas or something.
Hey, this is how it starts.
Yeah. And watch the shit be real.
Exactly.
It's like Corona beer is the outbreak monkey or something. While we're sitting up here worried about this beer, world leaders are actually looking at this and playing it down for several reasons. They're playing it down because they don't want to alarm the citizens. They don't want to make themselves look bad. They don't see how it's beneficial to them to actually report the realities of this. They don't want to come back and say, well, if you had actually not done a few things like ignore science or, go in and put people who are not qualified for positions in this area, then we might not have that problem. And, again, this is going to be another thing that could be debated among, people who are into politics. But a lot of people feel like Trump is doing this right now. Like he's not taking this too seriously because, one, there's no point in there to making him look good. Two, it's a chance for him to go out and finally appoint the people that he wants in certain departments. And three, he's always wanting to make himself look like the hero. And there's no way for him to spin this right now to make him look like the hero or to make him look good except to just flat out a lot of people.
It's a tough one, but a lot of progress has been made. Unfortunately, one person passed away overnight, medically high-risk patient in her late 50s.
Now, I'm not going to actually hold it against him at this point because, this is somber news and he's delivering it in the way it should be. My problem is when he actually tries to actually play this up, to play himself up. If he's doing, I believe he's okay with what he's doing right there. But what are you gonna say? I hear you want to say something, Chris.
What? Oh, you go.
No, I was gonna say. There's another video up there which took place before that one because they did a press conference, a rare thing in front of the media. Yeah. But one of his rallies, he was talking about specifically how it's like, it's gonna go away like a miracle. It's just gonna don't even worry about it. No, and that's the thing that bothers me. It's just, okay, one, he's playing off not because he cares about people. No, it's because it'll affect his polling, right? It'll affect his popularity. It's already affected the stock market. Mm-hmm. That's why. And now when he comes back, and my whole thing is that he cannot empathize because he is such a narcissist. When he can't make it about himself, then any of that, any emotion is just not present, like he did during that press conference. Sure. When he's just reading facts off, he's like, I got to do this, so here we go. And he's like, again, he sounds almost like tongue-tied, like he's like speech is just muddled, and it's just like that's it. Again, you can't even fake faux empathy. That's the thing that's embarrassing.
Well, he's got two modes, and one is when he's playing to his base and he's being the comedian.
Yeah,
and then the other is when he has to actually read something serious and he acts like he's never read before.
Yeah,
like he just graduated second grade,
Yeah.
and it's almost like a cue to his followers, like, well, you guys know they're making me say this.
Yeah,
but yeah, I look at that clip and I go like, man, I cannot believe nobody is telling him how bad that tanning is making his eyes look. All this time, it's like he's wearing a white. He's like a reverse raccoon. It's distracting. Every time he lowers his eyes and you see him, it's like, ew. Nobody's gonna say anything to him.
No, it's the light bulbs.
Shit, he got coronavirus of the eyes right now.
Vitiligo.
Jesus, man. I don't mind him. Look, I'm not gonna like pounce on him for every little thing, when there's other things to talk about that's wrong. If he wants to come out and read it in a solemn tone and somber tone, then fine, I get it. It's not the best news that he's given right now. But boy, that motherfucker will light up. He'll become very animated when he feels like he's giving people some news that makes him look good. When he feels like he's giving people some news that will go out there and make him look like a hero simply because he just delivered the news.
The virus.
The virus. You see, they said the virus.
The virus.
Hard. China, I spoke with President Xi, and they're working very, very hard. And I think it's going to all work out fine. Rough stuff. I tell you, rough stuff. But I think it's going to work out good.
Don't tell people that right now. This is one of the things that people are really spreading around for political purposes. Rush Limbaugh, I wish I had a picture of him. I forgot to pull it up. But Rush Limbaugh said that this whole corona... Talk about now that this man, the ultimate Trump, now that this man has received this medal from Trump, he has actually turned the coronavirus to make it all about this man. He's so far up his ass. He said that the coronavirus is something that's almost invented, but just kind of blown up as a conspiracy against Trump.
Oh, no.
These people are telling people false things like, oh, it's going to go away. It's just the flu. It's just a cold. It's not that big of a deal. It'll go away very soon. Meanwhile, you got your leaders out here telling you all this bullshit, but you motherfuckers are worried about a goddamn beer. Come on, people. I'm asking you. I'm begging you. Seek real sources. I know it's hard today because almost every news outlet all of them have chosen a side, and they're out sucking somebody's dick and not giving you real news. But really, I know it's hard, but it's not that hard to realize that the coronavirus is not connected to a brew, a beer, a bottle, a beer company. Meanwhile, if you ignore this, if you ignore the real information that's out there to focus on this right here, a beer, you're gonna be gullible to a lot of misleading facts that these that people supposed to take care of you are giving you. And I'm not just talking about Trump. These are leaders around the world.
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh right here. Winnie the Pooh gonna kill y'all, man. It ain't a beer, it's a bear that's gonna get you. This man cannot stand information that he hates to the point where this motherfucker had Winnie the Pooh murdered. Because they said he looked like Winnie the Pooh. Meanwhile, we say our president looks like Tigger and Obama don't give a
I do like Tigger.
The first person to try to expose the virus for what it was has died from it. But before he died, one of the reasons why he probably died is because there was propaganda given out there to not believe him, pushed by Xi Jinping, whatever the name is right here.
Yeah.
They didn't like that information that was going out there. They didn't want to alarm the citizens. They didn't want anything to make China look bad because this virus was originating from the country. So they pretty much came out and slandered this man and made him look bad. And then he died from it. And then that got to a point where, well, like with anything that's truth or reality, it's going to come out and it cannot be ignored. Just because you try to turn your head around and lie to people doesn't mean that's not going to happen. So, you got people out there in authority who are lying to you about this disease. And meanwhile, y'all like, well, I better not drink this beer. Oh, you got your mind? Really? This misinformation makes things worse. And you got to stop the silly shit and start paying attention to what's really happening. I mean, it's probably going to get to a point. This virus is going to do what it's going to do. It probably just kill us all, whatever. But at least I'd rather go down drinking a beer. You know?
Oh, you drink a beer anyway.
I would. That could be true.
You just as bad as true. You just don't want anything to stop you from drinking beer.
Shit, there could be beer in that bottle. I'm going to drink that shit. I've been drinking beer all weekend at this goddamn convention telling myself I ain't gonna
Exactly. They'll have some beer there that will say coronavirus on it, and you'll still drink it.
Yeah, please, people, please, protect yourself. And it's like I said, there might be nothing you can do about the disease itself, but you protect yourself in all aspects of information, man, because that stuff ignorance will be the biggest thing that will harm you sometimes. And, people out there looking on the internet, is there a virus in my corona? Come on, y'all.
But over here on DTmerch.com, we got the size that fits all, man. We got all that toasted goodness for different body shapes over there. We don't discriminate against anyone for that classic black tee with the white logo. We know it's in demand. We know who are we to deny people that toasted goodness like that? Many sizes. If you got a big ass body, that means you got big ass feet. We can fit those too with those slides that we have right there. You got a big ass head too. Hey, we can fit that too.
Talk to Dr. Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner and CNBC contributor. He serves on both Pfizer's and Illumina's boards. And Dr. Matt McCarthy, an infectious disease physician who is the author of Superbugs, The Race to Stop an Epidemic. Thank you both for joining us. Just to start off on a little bit different tangent, gentlemen, when did we discover penicillin? It was like in the 30s or so, wasn't it? I mean, what we've done in the past 90 years in the whole history of human existence, it's amazing where we are right now.
Yeah, discovered in 1927, became commercially available in 1944. We've had a long and successful history of diagnostics and therapeutics.
And we're better and better. Now we can sequence this thing instantaneously almost. We can do it in an automated way. Why shouldn't we be hopeful that we can come up with a therapeutic quickly?
Let me tell you the problem right now. Before I came here this morning, I was in the emergency room seeing patients. I still do not have a rapid diagnostic test available to me.
Well, that's easy to do, is it not? Is it hard to manufacture?
It is easy to do for some countries. What happened in the United States is that the CDC created a test,
messed up a reagent,
sent a test out to 50 states, and then said, "Oh, hold up, don't use it. Let us fix it."
How quickly
it's
can
now
we get
March.
on track now, Matt?
We hear that it's coming very soon, but I'm here to tell you right now, at one of the busiest hospitals in the country, I don't have it at my fingertips. I still have to call the Department of Health. I still have to make my case, plead to test people. This is not good. We know that there are 88 cases in the United States. There are going to be hundreds by middle of the week. There's going to be thousands by next week.
So
and this is a testing issue.
What do you do with people in the emergency room if you can't test them?
Well, we call and we try to test. We isolate them. We have an outstanding team of infection control practitioners who know how to handle this, but they're hamstrung by the fact that we don't have a diagnostic test available.
Are people getting sent home? Because I read reports of that over the weekend.
We're not sending people home. We're making sure they get what supportive care we can give. But keep in mind, we now have this in New York State, right? The person who tested positive was only the 32nd test we've done in this state. That is a national scandal. They're testing 10,000 a day in some countries, and we can't get this off the ground. I'm a practitioner on the firing line, and I don't have the tools to properly care for patients today.
The other challenge is that the providers can't take proper precautions if they can't test and
You've been
diagnose.
talking about this for weeks. That this is what we need to do.
On the on the therapeutic, I think this meeting today is focused on vaccines. We need to have a vaccine strategy. I think a vaccine is a year or two away.
Right.
I think we need to think about what we're going to have in the fall to be a backstop to this. Hopefully this will start to dissipate in July and August, but it's going to probably come back in the fall. And then what next? And the only thing that could be available in the near term is a therapeutic. If we have an antibody-based prophylaxis or a drug, because the vaccine's much longer.
Why isn't something existing in the HIV regimen that might work on a...
Well, we have an HIV drug, Kaletra, that we're studying right now. It's in a clinical trial. That information is not going to be available for a while. The message today is that we are hearing from this administration that the risk is low and that things are probably going to be okay. You don't need to change your lifestyle. That's simply not true. There are going to be thousands of cases here. We have already moved from containment to mitigation. We are trying to lessen the severity here. You are going to see widespread disruption to daily life. Do not believe the false reassurance.
So what does that mean in terms of what people should do on a daily basis?
Well, look, I think we're going to have outbreaks here in the U.S. There's no question about that. I think in parts of the country, we're past the point where we can contain this. We're going to have to look towards mitigation. Washington State, California. It doesn't need to become epidemic here in the United States. We have a much more advanced healthcare system. We have better infection control procedures in hospitals. I think we have the capacity to do that. I agree. We need to start taking more aggressive steps right now to make sure that this doesn't become epidemic.
China
so we don't look
testing.
like Wuhan.
China had testing. How did China
China had
able
testing
to possibly be on the downside of the epidemic? How did they do that?
Well, and there's also something called the boomerang effect, which we may be seeing in Hubei right now, which is that places we think are clear are starting to have rates creep up. We may see things bounce back. But the key here is do not believe the false reassurance. I'm telling you, the cases are about to surge, and only then can we make informed decisions.
Doesn't that lower
quarantine.
the denominator on the mortality?
Absolutely. So if we're talking about mortality rate, I see numbers like 1% to 2% thrown around. I don't believe that. The modeling we're using data out of Korea. We think that's the best
And what
approach.
is that?
0.2, 0.4%.
So that's twice as bad as a seasonal
Correct.
flu.
So
then.
a very bad flu season. Keep in mind, flu kills 25 to 69,000 Americans. So a very bad flu season.
The panic that has been caused already and the economic effects are already much more than twice the mortality rate of the flu. We're at 10 times the mortality rate of the flu.
What do you make of the Diamond Princess? Because I know that's not a typical population, but the case fatality rate there is going to be above 1% probably when that settles
Absolutely.
down.
And, if you're an 80-year-old...
Is that because it's an older population?
So, right. So if you're an 80-year-old on a cruise ship, you're in trouble. I mean, the case fatality rate's over 10%. We're seeing for ages 1 to 9 exceedingly low.
Right.
There's a lot about this we don't know.
Asymptomatic almost.
Absolutely. So widespread surveillance is going to start giving us information so that we can make these informed decisions about whether March Madness needs to be canceled.
Are there different levels of panic around the country? And the reason I'm asking is because I was in Detroit last week, and this is a small example, but I asked a room full of clients and investors, are you worried about coronavirus? And they unanimously said no. And I said, are you not worried because you think you're going to catch it and you'll still be okay? Or are you not worried because you don't think you're going to catch it? And they said we're not going to catch it.
Yeah, I think this is going to, for a while, this is going to be regional. You're going to have regional outbreaks where you're going to have more focus on it in certain parts of the country. Washington State, we're probably a couple of weeks away from some significant measures in Washington State to try to mitigate spread, and Northern California as well.
Look, a couple of weeks away, it's got an incubation period of potentially a couple of weeks. So are we kind of just always going to be behind the 8 ball on this? We're reacting to the news 2 weeks later?
Well, we have a lot of undiagnosed cases to his point right now. There's probably, low thousands of cases in this country that we now need to turn over the card on. So we're going to have a surge in cases before we start to catch up to the actual level of spread. It's a big country, 330 million people. So even if you have several thousand cases, your risk of contracting it's still low, but that could change very quickly.
Japan has taken some pretty extreme measures like closing schools. Is that?
They're not diagnosing their cases there as aggressively as South Korea is or Italy.
That's right. We're going to see school closures here, definitely. We're hearing that life's going to go about just like normal. That's not true. And to speak to the earlier question, I'll tell you, I live in Westchester. When I'm walking around Westchester, I'm not really worried about coronavirus. But when I get on the 6 train, when I'm walking around Times Square, when I'm in the emergency room every single day caring for patients, I am very worried. So
great. Thanks for joining us today, man. Santoli, you've got...
Yes.
Yeah.
Just because I ride the subway?
No, because you're sitting next to Matt.
Not as close as Scott is.
Yeah, not as close as Scott.
I was going to give my... Santoli, here's my Purell.
Take it.
How many cases do you suspect you've seen? If you had enough cases, if enough testing, how many cases would you have tested?
Well, we've seen one case in New York. I bet there are hundreds. I bet there are thousands in the United States. And the longer we wait to get testing up and running, the worse this is going to be. But I'm telling you, as a practicing clinician, we're not there to
Why did I
begin
say
testing.
I thought they were shipping tests to California in bulk? I thought that was the latest.
The testing capacity by the end of this week, so we have about 100 public health labs. They'll have a capacity to do 100 tests a day. So it's at 10,000 tests a day by the end of this week. That still requires physicians like you to call the public health department in the state to order the test. So that's cumbersome. By the end of the week after that, we should have maybe as much as another 10,000 test capacity a day. So we'll be at 20,000 tests that we can run per day as we bring on the academic labs. That's going to make it a lot easier for physicians like our guest to order tests within their hospital.
Well,
but that's not available yet.
What you want, Matt, right?
Right. So that's right. So a week or two from now is when we're going to begin getting real information. Right now, we're still largely flying blind. So if you're worried about fear and uncertainty, we're still in the thick of things.
County and Snohomish County closed because of fears over the coronavirus.
13 people have now tested positive in Western Washington. 2 of those people have died. These are the first deaths from coronavirus here in the United States.
And right now, 2 men in their 60s who tested positive are in critical condition. One, Valley Medical Center in Renton. The other is at Virginia Mason in Seattle. Both of them have underlying health problems, which makes it harder to fight the coronavirus off.
We are now in a state of emergency. Governor Inslee made the declaration over the weekend so that state agencies have the resources to prepare and respond to an outbreak.
And part of our team coverage this morning, Callie Greenberg outside that nursing home in Kirkland. But first, Amity Idrisi at Jackson High School in Mill Creek with 2 new school closures to report. Amity, good morning.
Good morning to you. Let's make that 3 new school closures. We just learned that Kingston High School in the North Kitsap County School District has closed its doors. They have learned that a student there is being tested for coronavirus. No confirmation on that, but they are closing the school as a precautionary measure. 2 more schools we've heard about this morning, both in the Mukilteo School District, Mariner High School, and Discovery Elementary School. Now, what we heard is that these schools have closed because of the fact that the parent of a Mariner High School student has tested positive for coronavirus. That student also visited Discovery Elementary, so that is why they're closing both of those schools, to make sure that everything is clean and that the other students stay safe. Meantime, I am standing outside of Jackson High School here in Mill Creek. They're closed today after a student has tested positive for the coronavirus here. We're told that he is isolated at home but is doing well. The student hadn't traveled, and so health officials aren't sure how he got the virus, or that student got the virus, but they did start feeling ill, stayed home from school, so luckily he had little contact with other classmates. But you can't be too careful, and that is why Jackson is closed today. Several other schools closing today as a precautionary measure and for deep cleaning. I'm going to list them for you right now. You can see them on your screen. Frank Love Elementary in Bothell, Hazen High School in Renton, Kentwood High School in Covington, Covington Elementary in Covington, Cedar Park Christian in Bothell, Lake Washington Institute of Technology. Now, a lot of people might be wondering about King County schools, including the biggest school district in the state, Seattle Public Schools. Right now, this is the statement they released on their Facebook page. They said, at this time, we are not recommending school closures or cancellation of activities, but we'll update should recommendations change. Now, we also want to mention tomorrow that the North Shore School District, all the schools will be closed for cleaning and training there as well. And it's important to note for all parents, in that initial press conference with health officials, they said that we should all be prepared for alternative childcare options because they did expect schools to start closing. So these are, again, precautionary measures. We're not talking about any outbreaks at any schools. These are just, again, steps being taken to keep schools clean and extra careful. I'm Amity Idrisi reporting live in Mill Creek, King 5 News.
Thank you so much, Amity. Seattle Public Schools says some Asian students are reporting being targeted and discriminated against because of coronavirus. The virus is thought to have originated in Wuhan, China. Seattle school administrators say this is unacceptable and contrary to our values of racial equity and social justice. It goes on to say we do not tolerate hate speech or acts of discrimination, and that COVID-19 is not connected to any race, ethnicity, or nationality.
The CDC is investigating the outbreak of coronavirus at that nursing facility in Kirkland, with 4 new cases reported over the weekend, including that one person who died. Callie Greenberg in Kirkland with an update.
According to Seattle and King County Public Health, 4 new cases of coronavirus have been confirmed, all from Life Care Center, a nursing home right here in Kirkland. Out of those 4 cases, 3 people are in the hospital right now in critical condition. A 4th individual, a male in his 70s, passed away on Saturday. This is the 2nd death in Washington state and the 2nd death in the United States as well. We're now learning a little bit more about people who may have come in and left the building and where this virus may have spread. Again, the only 4 confirmed cases, new cases, came from people directly inside the building. But today and tomorrow, the Lake Washington Institute of Technology campus will be closed while crews disinfect it. This is because 17 nursing students and 4 faculty members spent time with residents at the nursing home just last week. 25 Kirkland firefighters and paramedics who may have had contact with coronavirus patients, they are currently being quarantined. In fact, right now, if you head over to Fire Station 21, they're telling people with a sign on the door, do not enter. They've quarantined that entire fire station. 2 Kirkland police officers who responded to the Life Care Center, they are also under quarantine. That is purely as a precautionary measure. But the city of Kirkland did reassure people that they are running both departments at full staffing and responding to calls as they normally would. Lastly, today in Kirkland, city staff is going to be going through training. That means City Hall will open late at 10 a.m. In the training, they're going to be learning things like social distancing procedures as well as precautionary measures as things develop in Kirkland. As for the Life Care Center here, we know that the CDC is helping monitor and investigate what these cases and what other cases may come in the future. In Kirkland, Callie Greenberg, King 5 News.
Thank you, Callie. Not far away in Redmond, 7 paramedics are being quarantined. The city says, again, the use of words, it's out of an abundance of caution because of coronavirus. They also say the fire department is still fully staffed in case there are any emergency calls.
This morning, a female U.S. Postal Service worker in Federal Way who tested positive for coronavirus is recovering at home. The Federal Way postal facility has been cleaned, and the Department of Public Health is aware of the case.
Well, we want to make sure that you are informed but not cause hysteria, because the fact is there are a lot of things we don't know about the coronavirus. It's new to us all. So let's separate facts from fear. There have been 2 people who have died, as we've talked about so far, in Washington state. But so far this flu season, 74 people have died in Washington state. So nationwide, as many as 41,000 people have died because of the flu. With the current estimates in terms of coronavirus, that about 80% of us who might come down with it won't need to be hospitalized. It'll be like we suffer from the flu. You'll feel sick, but you won't have to go to the hospital. So what's with all the concern? Well, it is a new virus and there's no vaccine, unlike for influenza. It's also apparently more contagious than the flu. So your immune system kind of determines how well you do against it. So it's most dangerous for the elderly and anyone with an underlying health condition or someone who's in both of those categories. And as doctors sort everything out, we will make all that information available to you on king5.com in a special section. Just text the word virus to us and we'll text you back a direct link. Or if you just go to king5.com, it's one click.
For joining us. I think we spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. The situation, I'm not sure how you would describe it. Is it much, much worse? Was it to be expected and people are overreacting? Or do we really need to take as many precautions as the government is telling us?
Francine, I didn't expect to be here a few weeks from now talking about this again. I didn't think the story would run. I think it is reaching a bit of a tipping point, and I am quite concerned by how things are going.
This is because isolation doesn't work, or it's just the spread? I mean, you see, there are these super spreaders, which is basically 2-3 people don't realize they have symptoms, either because they're asymptomatic or it's like a cold, and then 1,000 people could be infected.
I think it's just basically now we have people that are spreading the disease, that have been documented to spread the disease without ever been in contact with anyone from any of these hotspots, and that's what's really worrying me. It could have been spreading for weeks, for example, in Seattle. And we're hearing more and more of these kind of things.
Professor, I mean, what do you look at for data, right? The fatality case or the mortality rate is difficult to judge, also because you could have, it could be quite low because so many people have it without realizing.
There's been a few, people are sort of fighting over the mortality rates. It's ranging anywhere from 1% to 0.1%. And the most recent estimates that I've seen have been closer to 1%. And this is much more than seasonal flu. So even if it's 0.1%, that's more than seasonal flu. And if it's a lot of people infected, we still have a lot of deaths to worry about.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us again. And I really want to strap across your expertise in bacteriology as well as virology. Let me cut to the conversation of the weekend. Do masks work?
Masks work up to a certain point. They block physical droplets, like big chunks of cough, from hitting your face. But they don't necessarily screen out sort of the smaller particles. Viruses and bacteria can go into your eyes. People don't use masks properly. They often sort of adjust them or touch their face. So Up to a certain point, they could do a little bit, but really you're better off washing your hands and not touching your face.
Right now in Berlin, there is a report. In Manhattan and, of course, greater New York City, there is one, maybe two reports as well. How should our viewers and listeners adjust to that? How do you adjust to the day to one report in a given multi-million population city?
You just have to be, I mean, you can't stop this virus, really. It's like stopping the wind. You have to just be sensible and take precautions, but life goes on. We have to just assume that life goes on and most people aren't going to die, and we really shouldn't panic. But it is spreading, and we do need to be vigilant about that. If you're in public places with lots of people in a closed space, you should think about, what's going on in the air between you.
Doctor, I mean, some of the things that, where it's difficult for everyone in the markets and frankly for anyone, because we're kind of expected to be virologists, in the bat of an eyelid. What I've been reading is that the concern is basically whether the National Health Service here in the UK or in Italy or in the US can actually cope with it. So there's also possibly the UK government trying to delay this because it would be much easier to deal with this over the summer. Is that true?
We don't know what's going to happen in the summer. I mean, there have been a lot of predictions, but we don't know if it's going to get better in the summer. We hope so, because some respiratory viruses do, but there's no guarantees.
But is it easier for a health service to deal with it in the summer?
Yeah, I would say so, because there are so many other things going on in the wintertime that overstress the health service.
What is the one thing that you would caution? I know it's difficult to talk to the markets, but the markets got really scared, and this could be in part what the market has been doing so far. But again, are you just expecting 80% of the population to be infected, but a very small percentage to actually pass away, or how should we be looking at this?
I think a lot of people will become infected. I don't think a huge number of people will die, but we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if the virus will mutate. At the moment, I'm not panicking. I'm just thinking it's important to be vigilant and keep an eye on things, but this thing does keep rolling.
Yeah, Dr. Rowan, I know you studied this at the University of Washington a few years ago. Let me cut to the chase. How long do these things last? I mean, I'm rereading Albert Camus' A Plague just to go back to microbiology and microbes in man and the rest of it as well. How long does this last?
We don't know. It could be that we'll come to some sort of accommodation with this virus. It will become our new seasonal flu. It may just trickle out like MERS did. We don't know. That's the big thing, is that we don't know. We just have to watch and wait. Yeah.
Emergency.
That's right. Overnight, a second person dying from the virus in the United States, a man in his 70s who had underlying health issues, passing away in the Seattle area. Another victim also in Washington state, a man in his 50s.
At least 3 new states are now reporting cases: New York, Florida, Rhode Island, and the number of cases growing in California, Washington state, and Illinois. There are now 80 cases in the U.S., more than 89,000 worldwide. Coronavirus cases are now being reported in at least 60 countries. 8 added to the list just this past weekend, including Mexico and the Dominican Republic.
And we have team coverage of the spreading emergency. Kaylee Hartung starts us off in Kirkland, Washington, which is now being considered the epicenter of the outbreak here in the United States. Good morning, Kaylee.
Good morning, Amy. No hospital in the country is currently treating more people with coronavirus than Evergreen Health here in Kirkland. And now we're learning of research that suggests this deadly virus has been quietly spreading across Washington state for the past 6 weeks through people who didn't even know they were infected.
Overnight, a second death in the U.S. as the number of confirmed cases of coronavirus across the country continues to rise. 2 people in the Seattle area have died after contracting the virus. 2 men, one in his 50s, another in his 70s, both with underlying health issues, who had not recently traveled abroad.
What we're seeing is the tip of the iceberg.
A state of emergency issued in Washington state, where 13 patients have been diagnosed with COVID-19, including a postal worker and a high school student. This nursing home in Kirkland, the source of 6 of the confirmed cases. Health officials say at least 50 more patients are being evaluated.
We've just seen another person loaded up into this ambulance to be taken to the hospital.
Researchers in Washington telling ABC News their analysis of samples of the virus strongly suggests it's been spreading in this state for the past 6 weeks. In New York City, a woman in her 30s is self-quarantined in her Manhattan apartment, contracting the virus after traveling to Iran. New York's mayor tweeting, "We have said it was a matter of when, not if, there would be a positive case of coronavirus in New York." In Rhode Island, a high school is shut down for the week. 2 people testing positive for the virus there after returning from a school trip to Italy.
The major task is for us is to continue the extensive contact tracing work.
Several American universities abruptly ending their study abroad programs in countries where the virus is quickly spreading. A student at St. Mary's College is studying in Italy and being urged to return home.
We were asked to leave as soon as possible before anything got worse.
Fear of the virus contributing to scenes like this. At a Costco in Washington state, lines of shoppers were seen stocking up on necessities like wipes, toilet paper, and water. Public health officials reassuring Americans that 80% of cases of coronavirus are mild, and citing the low number of cases, they're calling for calm.
We're ramping up testing. We now have 75,000 tests available out there in the United States, and over the next week that will expand radically.
The elderly and anyone with a weakened immune system is at high risk for the virus. But healthcare workers and first responders are finding themselves in vulnerable situations. A quarter of the 100 firefighters here in the city of Kirkland are now under quarantine after being exposed to the virus at that nursing home facility not far from here. None of them are showing symptoms, but they're being closely monitored. Amy?
All right, Kaylee Hartung, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here.
Those who are wondering, and we want to get right to this breaking news. It's the coronavirus outbreak this morning.
Overnight, a second death in the United States was announced. A Washington state man at the same hospital where the first victim died. Meanwhile, New York City now has its first confirmed case as well.
Also this morning, the CDC is set to expand testing. That would allow hundreds of labs to test for the coronavirus and identify potential patients, which could mean that the numbers really skyrocket.
Meanwhile, Americans preparing for the worst. Major drug chains and supermarkets are struggling to keep items like hand sanitizer and bottled water on the shelves.
We are covering every angle of this story, and there are a lot of developments to get to. Let's start this morning with NBC national correspondent Miguel Almaguer. Miguel, good morning to you.
Savannah, good morning. As we begin to approach 100 cases of coronavirus in the United States, 13 of those cases are here in Washington state alone, including those 2 deaths you mentioned. Over the last several weeks, officials say the strain of the coronavirus may have gone undetected in this state for weeks. They're also trying to now contain the outbreak.
Overnight in Washington state, a second death linked to coronavirus. The victim, a man in his 70s with underlying health conditions in the Seattle area. The announcement comes just one day after the first U.S. coronavirus death in the same state, a man in his 50s also with underlying health conditions. This, as researchers say, a genetically similar strain of the virus may have been spreading in Washington state undetected for nearly 6 weeks. The victim, in his 70s, was a resident at this nursing home near Seattle, where officials are now investigating a possible outbreak after 6 people here tested positive for the virus. Now, more than 50 residents and staff are experiencing symptoms and awaiting testing.
There's a staff member who lives here, so lots of concern, of course.
In Texas, new fears of a potential public exposure after one patient was released from a several-week-long quarantine. But overnight, a lab test coming back positive for the virus, despite 2 prior negative test results. That person now back in quarantine again. With several schools closed today after concern infected employees or students may have been inside, so far at least 4 U.S. coronavirus cases have been contracted through community spread, meaning none of the patients have traveled to a highly infected country or known to have been in direct contact with someone who has the virus. The first, a woman at this Sacramento hospital, is believed to have infected at least 2 healthcare workers that came into contact with her. Now the coronavirus is in at least 13 states, including a new case in New York confirmed overnight. A woman in her 30s who lives in Manhattan and recently traveled to an infected area. The president looking to ease fears in a rare Saturday press conference.
Our country is
prepared for any circumstance.
But as the virus spreads from coast to coast, the next challenge may be containing an outbreak.
Over the last several days in grocery stores and in box stores across the country, there's been a major run on supplies. Many retailers are reporting everything from hand disinfectant to masks where they can be available. Officials say later on this afternoon here in Washington state, they hope to hold a press conference to update the latest information. This as in California, more of those quarantined folks who were evacuees from overseas are set to be released from Travis Air Force Base. Savannah.
All right, Miguel, in the state of Washington, leading us off. Thank you very much.
The spread of the coronavirus is also having a major impact on some of the world's most iconic landmarks. This morning, the Louvre Museum is closed for the second day in a row, and officials in Italy have reported a 50% increase in cases there. NBC's chief global correspondent, Bill Neely, is in Milan for us. Bill, good morning to you.
Good morning, Craig. Well, the mood matches the weather here. Pretty grim. More deaths. In Italy, churches still closed. In France and Germany, a dramatic spike in cases. And for the first time, the number of cases worldwide greater than 3,000. It's currently the world's most contagious virus, and it's shut down the world's most visited museum. At the Louvre in Paris, long lines but no entry. Staff afraid, tourists worried.
The virus has gone viral.
Cases have spiked in France. The health minister advising people not to kiss or shake hands when meeting, as President Macron did days ago with Italy's leader. In Italy and Germany, the infection rate nearly doubled in a day. Italy now reporting nearly 1,600 cases and 34 dead. The World Health Organization advising anyone over 60 or with underlying conditions, that's hundreds of millions globally, to avoid crowded areas.
Day by day, we see the window of opportunity closing.
In South Korea, another huge surge of infections. The entire population urged to stay home. The leader of a religious sect apologizing today. 2/3 of the country's cases are linked to his group. The capital's mayor levelling murder charges against him. The Pope has cancelled today's annual retreat. He coughed and sneezed praying in Rome Sunday. The Vatican says he has a cold, not the virus. In Israel today, voting in the country's election, with special polling stations for voters who've been quarantined. The Caribbean has its first infection, an Italian tourist in the Dominican Republic. Australia and Thailand reporting their first deaths. In China, the lowest number of new cases in a month. One bright spot in a bleak crisis. More than 60 countries now battling the virus. So more than 60 countries, but remember, many of those countries have just 1 or 2 cases. And most of those cases, in fact 80%, are just mild infections, sometimes with no symptoms at all. So globally, authorities are saying, don't panic, but they're also saying these are critical days in battling the spread of this virus. Guys, back to you.
Our chief global correspondent, Bill Neely, for us there in Milan. Bill, thank you.
And now we are joined by NBC medical contributor Dr. Joseph Fair. He's a leading virologist. He actually was on the front lines to contain the Ebola outbreak in Africa. Dr. Fair, good morning. It's good to have you with us. So this notion that the CDC has now lowered the criteria so more people can be tested to see if they have coronavirus, potentially that means we could see the numbers really go high. What is the impact of that decision?
In fact, that's presumably what we will see. And I would almost say undoubtedly that's what we'll see. Is the more we test for this, the more we'll be able to see. Overnight, we've gone from 2 states to 7 states, which have active cases, and those are being tested by local public health laboratories, yet to be confirmed by the CDC.
Here's the thing, though. A lot of the symptoms sound like the common cold, sound like the flu. How can you determine if you have coronavirus? Who should be getting tested?
You personally cannot, because of the very words you just mentioned. You know, it is going to present just like the common cold. It's going to present just like the common flu. So the thing to do is go to your primary care physician, get those ruled out. First of all, get your flu shot, because that way it helps us rule out flu to start with. Okay. And then go to your physician if you have the common cold. They'll test you to see if it is the common form of coronavirus cold, because we are in the middle of cold and flu season. And that will then, raise the level. If you're negative for that, but you still have all the symptoms, that would indicate you probably need to be tested for COVID-19.
Yeah, there are reports that this virus can be asymptomatic, that show no symptoms at all, which raises the specter of it actually already being here and people not even knowing it or knowing that they have it. Do you consider that to be a fairly likely possibility?
Oh, absolutely. And, just like with your common cold, there's anywhere from mild to moderate. In fact, that's the majority of cases are mild to moderate. And 15 to 20% are where we're seeing the severe illness, the severe acute respiratory syndrome.
If you're one of those people asking for a friend who will just live with the common cold and keep going to work and just keep on trucking, is this the time when you should actually, if you have a cold, go see your doctor and get coronavirus ruled out?
Absolutely. We recommend it every year, but it's more important this year than ever to do that.
Really quickly, Dr. Fair, what more should we be doing that we're not doing to prevent this outbreak from worsening?
It really comes down to the individual, and it's each of our responsibilities. So increase your hand washing, use things like tissues to push elevator buttons, hold on to handrails, etc. If you're flying and don't have the choice of not traveling, wipe down that seat with a Clorox wipe or a Lysol wipe, etc. Wipe down your tray table, etc. Because when they clean an airplane, they're not disinfecting the airplanes.
Do those masks work at all on any level?
The masks work, but they work for healthcare professionals because we're trained in what we call infection prevention and control. The vast majority of people don't know how to use a regular surgical mask, and a surgical mask doesn't protect you from a respiratory illness. That's more to protect an open body for a patient that, is having surgery.
Okay. Dr. Fair, thank you. I'm sure we've seen a lot of you. Appreciate
welcome to the team, by the way.
Thank you so much.
NBC here with more on the outbreak's impact, including that tailspin on Wall Street. NBC's senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule is also with us this morning. And I know you've spent much of the weekend talking to leaders in business and finance after last week's huge losses, worst week since 2008. What are they telling you now? How are they prepared to move going forward this week?
Honestly, they're less focused on stock performance, and they are really taking massive precautionary measures to ensure safety. On Friday alone, Bill Gates said this could be the once-in-a-lifetime virus that we feared. Let's hope that it's not, but until we know, we need to operate as such. And you are seeing companies across the globe limit travel, cancel meetings, events. If you run a global business, I spoke to a technology CEO with 30,000 employees who reminded me, we've got 5% of our business in Japan. Japan has no school until the end of March. They've already got lots of employees working from home or not really working because they've now got to take care of their kids. So from a business perspective, they're not thinking about what this is going to do to hurt their stock. They've got to focus on safety and think about the stark contrast that is from the White House, who's been saying for days, we've got this airtight, it's a hoax, the flu's worse. This is the first time you see a real difference.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that because the president has talked about a rate cut, having the Federal Reserve cut rates, which, as we know, in many other situations can kind of goose and revive the economy. Is that an appropriate measure in a situation like this?
I spoke to an investment banking chief that said it just doesn't make sense at this time. The president's priority might be, I got to get that market moving again because he has election pressures. They don't. When you cut rates, the idea is let's lower rates so we can get businesses investing and people out there spending and borrowing. That flies in the face of what we're telling people to do with this virus.
From a public health perspective.
Cancel events. And there's people to think about in terms of economics. If you cancel a major event or you move employees to work remotely, you have insurance to cover that. You've got budgets. Imagine if you're part of the gig economy. If you're a taxi driver, a waiter, a dog walker, a babysitter, you're going to see a serious impact. And those are people who also might not have health care.
Steph Rule, thank you.
Huge ripple effect. We're just beginning to see it for sure. Thank you to both of you, actually. We're following another.
Check. 1, 2. Lip sync. 1, 2, 3, 4.
introduce who's here, and then I'll make some opening comments, and then I'll turn it over to Mayor de Blasio. To my far right, Dr. Ken Davis, President and CEO of Mount Sinai Health Systems, Dr. David Reich from Mount Sinai Hospital Systems also, Ken Rasky, who is the President and the CEO of the Greater New York Hospital Association. I want to thank him for all his good work. Our State Health Commissioner, Dr. Zucker, this good gentleman you know, B. Grouse, who is the President of the Health Association of New York State, Haney's, Dr. Steve Corwin, who is the President of New York Presbyterian Hospital, Joe Loda, Executive Vice President from NYU Langone Medical Center, but at one time he had a really important job. And we have Dr. Barbeau, Commissioner of New York City Health Department. First, we're going to speak about the situation that was reported last night with a person who tested positive for the coronavirus. That woman is a healthcare worker. She's 39 years old. She had been working in Iran and came back on Tuesday to New York. She did not take any public transportation. As she was a healthcare worker, she was very aware of this situation and the potential for this situation. We don't believe that she was contagious when she was on the plane or when she took a private car from the airport to her residence. But out of an abundance of caution, we will be contacting the people who were on the flight with her from Iran to New York and the driver of that car service. And we'll be contacting them and following up with them as the facts dictate. The healthcare worker also was with her spouse. He was also a healthcare worker, so they were both aware of the situation. Her husband is being tested also, but we are assuming that he would be positive given the circumstances, and he has been following the same protocols that she has been following. The testing was done at Mount Sinai. Again, since they were healthcare workers, they had contacted Mount Sinai before that they were coming in, and they took all precautions necessary. They are at home, at their home. The healthcare worker has manifested some respiratory illnesses, but her condition is mild, so she's at home, and she's not even hospitalized, even though she has tested positive for the virus. Her spouse is with her. In general, there is no doubt that there will be more cases where we find people who test positive. We said early on, it wasn't a question of if, but when. This is New York. We're a gateway to the world. You see all these cases around the world, around the country. Of course, we're going to have it here. And that's why the whole challenge is about containment of the number of people who become exposed and who become infected. Our challenge now is to test as many people as you can. You're not going to eliminate the spread, but you can limit the spread. And testing is very important. And that's why the CDC, the federal government's now allowing us to test, is a very big deal. And will have a dramatic effect on how quickly we can mobilize and respond. We are coordinating with private hospitals, private labs around the state. We want to get our testing capacity as high as possible. I said to the people around this table that I would like to have a goal of 1,000 tests per day capacity within 1 week, because, again, the more testing, the better. Once you can test and find a person who's positive, then you can isolate that person so they don't infect additional people. We'll be moving a piece of emergency legislation on the state side that will authorize an additional $40 million for additional staff, additional equipment. I want to make sure that the healthcare system has everything it needs. We're going to be instituting new cleaning protocols in our schools, on public transportation, et cetera, where they will use a disinfectant. Many will use bleach, which is a good protocol in the flu season anyway. So if people smell, it smells like bleach when you get on a bus or when a child goes to school, it's not bad cologne or perfume, it is bleach. And again, we're going to be focusing on our facilities that treat our senior citizens, debilitated people, or immune-compromised people, because those are the people who are most likely most affected by this virus. My last point is this. Late last night, my daughter called me, and I could hear in her voice that she was anxious. She had seen on the news that a person tested positive. My daughter said, you know, what's this? And I could hear in her voice she was nervous. And my daughter said, don't tell me to relax. Tell me why I should be relaxed, which is a very big difference there. So I want to make sure I tell the people of New York what I told my daughter. In this situation, the facts defeat fear, because the reality is reassuring. It is deep breath time. First of all, this is not our first rodeo with this type of situation in New York. 1968, we had the Hong Kong flu. 2009, we had the swine flu, where we actually closed like 100 schools in New York State. Avian flu, Ebola, SARS, MERS, measles, right? So we have gone through this before. When you look at the reality here, about 80% of the people who are infected with the coronavirus self-resolve. They have symptoms. The symptoms are similar to what you would have with a normal flu. And for most people, they treat themselves, over 80%, and the virus resolves that way. About 20% get ill. The mortality rate is estimated to be about 1.4%. 1.4%. What does that mean? The normal flu mortality rate is about 0.6%. And the CDC says 1.4, but they're extrapolating from what we know from countries around the world. First, even on the 1.4%, again, that tends to be people who are debilitated, senior citizens, many of whom have an underlying illness. That tends to be the people who are vulnerable to this. Good news, children do not appear as vulnerable to this virus. Less vulnerable than to the normal flu. So that is good news. But 1.4%, that's extrapolating from China and other countries. 80%, it'll resolve on their own. The woman who is now tested positive, she's at home. She's not even in a hospital. So the perspective here is important. And the facts, once you know the facts, once you know the reality, it is reassuring. And we should relax, because that's what's dictated by the reality of the situation. I get the emotion. I understand it. I understand the anxiety. I'm a native-born New Yorker. We live with anxiety. But the facts don't back it up here. Also, we're extrapolating from what happened in China, other countries. We have the best healthcare system in the world here. Excuse our arrogance as New Yorkers. I speak for the mayor also on this one. We think we have the best healthcare system on the planet right here in New York. Amen. So when you're saying what happened in other countries versus what happened here, we don't even think it's going to be as bad as it was in other countries. We are fully coordinated. We are fully mobilized. This is all about mobilization of a public health system, getting the testing done, getting the information out, and then having the healthcare resources to treat people who are going to need help. Again, that is going to be primarily senior citizens, people who are debilitated, and we're going to have a special effort for our nursing homes, etc., congregate facilities where senior citizens are being treated. And I can't thank our partners enough. Everybody is doing exactly what we need to do. We have been ahead of this from day one. From day one. There was a big break when the federal government allowed us to do our own testing, because now we are actually in control of the system ourselves. And as New Yorkers, we like control. So with that, let me turn it over to the good mayor of the city of New York.
Thank you very much, Governor. And Governor, first of all, a compliment to your daughter. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She is asking the tough Socratic questions that I know you're known for. And I think it's a really great vignette to use to help everyone understand what's going on. And particularly, look, as a parent, I want to say I know parents all over the city have been deeply concerned. I really want you to heed the points that the governor just made. This is a disease we're learning about, the international medical community is learning about, but so far it does not seem to be a disease that focuses on our kids. In fact, the opposite. But the point, the vignette with your daughter, that in fact the facts are reassuring. All New Yorkers should really pay attention to this. We have a lot of information now. The information is actually showing us things that should give us more reason to stay calm and go about our lives. Also, if I have one difference with the governor's remarks, is that we don't think we have the best health care system in the country or in the world. We know we do. And it's a credit to everyone here, and I want to thank each and every one of you and all the professionals who work with you.
And credit to us, no?
I'll take it. But in the private, in the voluntary hospitals, our nonprofit healthcare providers, and our public healthcare system, there's literally no parallel on earth. So there's a lot of places for New Yorkers to turn for help, and I want to emphasize today how important it is to turn for that help, to go get that help the second you think you might need it. So the facts, in fact, show us that this is a situation that can be managed. But bluntly, what has been the advantage here in New York, we've kind of been the anti-China in this sense, has been to say from the beginning, it's coming here. It's a real thing. Everyone get ready for it, to be transparent, to be open about it from day one. And the coordination between the city and state, as is always the case on these issues of health care, has been consistent and strong from the beginning. I want to thank you and your team, Governor, for that. So the fact is, we have told New Yorkers from the beginning, get ready. Here it comes. We're going to all be able to deal with it together. By the way, crucially important, the message to New Yorkers from the beginning has been, this is something we all can handle together. Go about your lives, go about your business. People are doing that consistently. New Yorkers do not scare easily, do not intimidate easily. Second, we've said, if you have the symptoms and have any nexus to the nations where the issue is profound at this point, go get health care. Guess what? People have been doing that. The reason it's taken all this time to get to the first case, I fundamentally believe, it's a matter of common sense, is that people have been heeding the warnings, going and getting tested, going and getting checked on, and that's helped us to stay ahead of it. Now, we need to keep doing that. Obviously, if you have the symptoms and you have a nexus to the nations that are suffering the most, whether it's you yourself have traveled or a family member or loved one or someone you're in close contact with, go get help. get to a medical facility, get to a doctor immediately. It's crucial to understand that, and this is, again, an evolving situation. I'm briefed constantly by our healthcare professionals. No one is saying they know everything about coronavirus yet, but we do know a lot. This is not, so far, something that you get through casual contact. There has to be some prolonged exposure. And I think it's really important to get that information out to all New Yorkers. People need to be aware of their patterns. If you've had contact with someone who may have had a nexus to one of those countries, that's an important indicator. Act on it. Listen, there was some question earlier about, in the last few days, about whether you go directly to healthcare, you place a call first. Here's the bottom line. Don't hesitate to get to a doctor or a healthcare facility. If you can call first and let them know you're coming and let them know your symptoms, that's ideal and helpful. But the most important thing is not to hesitate. We all know a lot of people, and particularly New Yorkers, tend to shrug things off, tend to say, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it, or my schedule is so busy, I've got something else I have to do. That's not the way to think about this. If you have the symptoms, if there's any possibility it may be this disease, get to health care right away. I want to also say that the case here that the governor described is an example of the work that is done, and we all know this. We remember when we all went through Ebola together and other situations, and I appreciate the governor's point. We've been down this road as a city, as a state, many times before. We have disease detectives at the New York City Department of Health. Now, the New York City Health Department is renowned all over the world, one of the great public health agencies on earth. Disease detectives who literally track back everyone's interactions if they contract a disease, do the work to figure out who they've come in contact with. As the governor said, in this case, this individual has only one person they've been in prolonged contact with. That's their husband. That capacity has been honed over years. So we have other cases, we're going to be able to do very fine-tuned work to know who those individuals have come in contact with and do the kind of follow-up we need. Finally, the key point about having the ability to do our own testing. City and state have been working together with the Wadsworth lab. The state lab's been fantastic. We've been able to get a lot done. We're going to be able to do so much more now starting this week. City's capacity will be up and running for the testing. As of Friday, that means results will come in hours, not days. This is going to be a much better situation for all of us. In addition, we're initiating this week an early detection system. We're working with a number of hospital systems to bring together information gleaned from thousands of healthcare professionals as they're having appointments with individual patients. And there are cases that have relevance here, respiratory diseases. The information coming from those visits is going to be pooled to watch for any trends, to watch for any areas where we need to do additional outreach or work at the neighborhood level. This is very much a grassroots reality, how you address something like this. It's making sure information flows right down into each neighborhood, into each household. It's making sure we have people out there giving people accurate information. It's making sure if someone needs help, they can get it. And I want to emphasize to all New Yorkers, there are people in this city who right now may feel they need to get to a doctor but don't know how. They don't have their own doctor. They don't know if they can pay for it. They don't happen to speak English. They don't have a way to get to the doctor. They may be disabled. Whatever it is, call 311. Here's a simple message. If you think you need care, if you are worried you have the symptoms of coronavirus and you don't know where to turn, pick up the phone, call 311. We will help you get to the health care you need. If we need to send someone to you, we will send someone to you. But no one should hesitate. The best thing you can do for yourself, your family, all fellow New Yorkers, is get to health care immediately if you think you have that need. So with that, I'll just conclude with the basics. Remember, everyone, as our health commissioner, Dr. Barbeau, likes to constantly remind us, cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze. It's amazing that that may be the single most valuable thing people can do to address this challenge. Just the basics. Wash your hands frequently. If you think you may be sick, act like you are sick and do something about it. These are really basic rules. If people follow those rules, and I think New Yorkers have been up to date, it will make all the difference in the world. So following those simple precautions will help us a lot. And again, thank you to Dr. Barbeau, our health commissioner, Deputy Mayor Raul Perea-Hensi, Health and Human Services, and our whole team that's been working with the state to prepare for this day, and now we will all be working together to address this challenge.
Well said. Questions?
Governor, can every case here be traced back to a patient zero, or is it possible multiple cases were affected, and can it ever spring up simultaneously, perhaps, at more than one place?
Patient zero is called China here, right? And beyond that, China does the tracking. Community spread is going to be real, right? Thus far, we've had, you can trace it back to an individual or someone who came from overseas, but we're seeing already on the West Coast that there's then community spread where you lose the causal connection along the way. And we believe that's going to happen here. So we will have more cases. We will have community spread. That is inevitable. And we're in this cycle. Well, did anyone test positive? Did anyone test positive? I've been saying for weeks, people are going to test positive. Not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. There will be many who test positive. That's a false bar that we've set. And you will have community spread where people test positive and you can't track it back to any one causal link. The testing and increasing the testing capacity, and that's why we just had a conversation about how aggressive can we be to ramp up the testing, because these institutions can also do testing where they get the test, the approved test, but they have the laboratories to do it. We want 1,000 tests per day. Test as many as you can, and then isolate those people so you reduce the spread. But that's all this is about, is reducing the spread, not eliminating the spread. And then you say, well, so the virus will spread. Yes, it will spread. Like, by the way, the flu spreads every year. And then you get in to talk about the consequences, which is 80% of the people who get this virus will just self-resolve. They'll think they have the flu and they have the symptoms, and then it self-resolves.
What precautions are being taken where this woman lives, whether it's an apartment building or in her neighborhood, anything like that?
Yeah, first, this is a trained healthcare professional. Obviously, in this environment, she was very aware of the possibilities. So she did textbook everything right. Her spouse, also healthcare worker, was with her. Again, textbook everything right. They have basically been in a controlled circumstance. We don't believe she was contagious when she was exposed to other people. Because remember, the contagion comes from the sneezing, the coughing, etc. In a isolated setting. She we don't believe she was contagious on the airplane or in the car. Out of an abundance of caution, the quote-unquote detectives at the disease detectives that the mayor referred to, we're going to contact the people on the plane and the private car driver. But those were really, to the best of our knowledge, the only possible exposure.
Hold on, go ahead,
I'd like
Commissioner.
to add to that in terms of what the governor mentioned. Because of the fact that this New Yorker took early action, and we know that there's currently no indication that it's easy to transmit by casual contact, there's no need to do any special anything in the community. We want New Yorkers to go about their daily lives, ride the subway, take the bus, go see your neighbors. The important thing, as both the mayor and the governor have said, we want New Yorkers to lean even more into frequent hand washing and covering their mouths and their noses. And if you can't get to a water source, make alcohol-based hand sanitizer your new best friend.
Governor, I also want to bring up a concern of medical staff after talking to a couple of people who work in ER rooms. And usually the measures that are taken are outside in the streets. But what is going to be the measure that's taken for healthcare providers? Right now there are hospitals in the Bronx that don't have a lot of N95 masks. There's one that has 1.5 boxes, which means 30 masks, to like try to take care of the situation. Also, like when we look at the amount of the beds that they just don't have the amount of people to take care of that. The respirators during flu season, they have to ask to another hospitals. If they get infected, the hospital, like the doctors and healthcare providers, do they have to be quarantined in the hospital if they're going back home, or what are the measures that you're taking here to protect them?
You raise a good issue, and it's something when we talk about being prepared, and we knew this was coming for weeks, which was actually an advantage. Having the right supplies, the right masks, the right protective gear, the right training is something we've been working on with the entire hospital system. We started weeks ago in terms of having the equipment and having the training. It has worked very, very well. If any hospital doesn't have the right equipment, they should let us know ASAP, and we will get it to them because we have it. And I'm going to refer to Mr. Ken Rasky, who represents the hospitals and who has been working with us on this.
Well, thank you, Governor. It's a great question. Protecting the healthcare workers is our primary concern, obviously, within the healthcare community, and having the right equipment is essential in that obligation. And I have to tell you, and it's represented here at this table with the governor, the mayor, and our respective commissioners who are outstanding health department officials. We work hand in glove with them in terms of getting whatever supplies that are necessary to the places that are needed. In both cases, both the city and the state, there are stockpiles of stuff, medical equipment, medical paraphernalia, and stuff like that we can draw down. The federal government has one too, and all of which are tappable in terms of this. But the coordination effort is done, in our case, through our office of institutions that are running into shortages of this, that, or the next thing. And we will do the best that we possibly can to contact Commissioner Zucker, our Commissioner of Health in the city, and we will get those supplies to them ASAP.
Yeah. There's also just one general point. There is no mystery to how this is, how contagious this is, or how it transfers, right? This transfers like the common flu. So for healthcare workers, yeah, you take the right precautions, but it's not like we're dealing with something that we haven't dealt with before. Actually, we've dealt with worse, right? The Ebola virus, that was really a much more difficult, more frightening situation than this.
Governor, now that the CDC has given the go-ahead for this testing to go forward, are you satisfied that you've gotten everything that you need from the federal government to handle the epidemic?
Have we gotten everything we need from the federal government? No. No, on many levels. On this specific level, we have the testing, but I spoke to Vice President Pence. He's heading the President's task force. They're going to be doing a supplemental appropriation. This is going to be expensive for the state, for the city. And we are, I understand the relationship to the federal government. I understand our responsibility. But this is a significant financial burden. We have no issue with the administration, the management, in doing the job. But the financial consequences are highly relevant, and at a minimum, we would expect the federal government to help with that.
Is New York City's public laboratory currently testing or not until
As I said, as of Friday, this coming Friday.
This coming Friday.
Yep.
Okay. And so what is our current capacity? I know you said that you wanted 1,000 tests, but what is the current capacity? And was there delay testing this woman because of the lag in the FDA approval?
There is no, our current capacity is several hundred. So we have much more capacity than tests that are being requested. The city lab will come online, the mayor said, on Friday. The people around this table, they also have laboratories. And the state is going to give them the approved test, and they will then operate that test. So we've set an initial goal of 1,000 tests per day capacity, all combined. and then we'll see where we go from there.
The mayor said earlier that it was a matter of hours that we getting the test. Can you give us like a TikTok of where someone gets tested, what how that test is done, how exactly how long that takes, and also should this God forbid get worse, are there hospital beds set aside in the city for people?
As I've said publicly days ago, 1,200 beds are right now identified and that can be used in the city without interfering with other healthcare activities. So we have that in reserve. Now, I want to emphasize the governor's point earlier. Right now, we are nowhere near that kind of need. Yes, we do expect community spread, and yes, we have to be ready for anything. But I want to emphasize that, one, you've got a disease that for the vast majority of people manifests as something that they can handle just by, waiting it out and taking some basic steps. It is obviously dangerous to a small percentage of people. We take that very, very seriously, but I want us to put it in perspective. Governor's point about Ebola is well taken. I remember us sitting here during the Ebola crisis. That was a disease that, once it hit, if you got it, you were in grievous danger no matter who the hell you were. This is a whole different reality. But I think the other point to recognize here is that we have the ability to address this if all these messages get out of the kinds of things people need to do, the basic precautions, getting to a doctor if you have the symptoms, all of us now being able to test quickly. We have the capacity to keep this contained. If, God forbid, it spreads, the fact that at this hour we have 1,200 beds ready right this moment should be very reassuring to New Yorkers.
Can you be specific on
I think
how many
either the
hours?
commissioners might be able to
Several
speak
hours.
to
The
that.
test itself takes several hours to conduct, but within about 12 hours, the results are turned around from start to finish.
This is faster than before.
Yes, because we're doing it ourselves.
We're not sending it to Atlanta.
It has started. It's ongoing. The state did this test.
When did she arrive? On what flight did she take?
We can get you the specifics. She arrived on Tuesday. Our best information is she was not contagious on the flight. Out of an abundance of caution, we're going to be contacting the people who were on that flight and took a private car to her residence. She was with her spouse. We're testing the spouse, who's also a healthcare worker. We assume the spouse will be positive, okay? So that's our operating assumption. He has been following the same protocols. They were tested at Mount Sinai, and we got the results last night. Let's do one more. Because she doesn't need a hospital. And that is the point here. Somebody used an expression, this is like the flu on steroids, okay? 80% of the people, when infected with the coronavirus, will self-treat. Yes, and self-resolve. They'll think they have the flu because it's the same type of systems. About 20% will get ill. And again, as the mayor said, I've said, everyone around this table has said, the people who are in danger, quote unquote, most danger, immune compromised, debilitated people, senior citizens, like the normal flu. And those are the people who we have to focus on and concentrate. Good news here, the normal flu also does children. This virus does not seem to affect children. So this is good news. And the case that tested positive should be an affirmation. She's positive, and she's home because she doesn't need to be in a hospital. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Good note,